Those things that I remembered from school were those science labs where I did dissect the frog, where I remember that those hands-on things are what really stick with children and what they remember about school. And so that top-down celebration is excellent, but you have to be careful, because if you do too much top-down celebration, people can start to look at one another. Oh, that's his favorite, or that's her favorite. Where when you have that peer-to-peer celebration, it's really grassroots. It's coming from the bottom up, and it really helps build that positive school culture. We talked at the beginning of the school year about how people can either be faucets or drains, and that the efforts of many faucets can be drained by one drain, and a drain simply doesn't have to do anything to be a drain. It can simply exist, and that we all need to be faucets and to fill one another up.
So today we're joined by Shane Lis, principal of TMSA Concord Elementary School, part of the growing TMSA public charter schools network in North Carolina. With more than 20 years of experience across public and charter schools, Shane has led schools' turnaround efforts, built strong family and community engagement systems, and consistently delivered academic growth. Now, as the founding leader of TMS's newest elementary school, he's focused on building culture, supporting teacher growth, and establishing systems that celebrate and scale the best practices. We are so excited to have you today. How are you doing, Shane?
I'm very well. Thank you for asking. I hope you are.
Good too. Thank you so much. Okay, so I would love to start this discussion with starting a little about your journey. So what drew you into education, and do those reasons still feel just as relevant to you today?
Absolutely. So I knew I wanted to be a teacher from a very young age. I had done some mentoring as a high school student of some elementary students through our local system, and worked summer camps as a high school student. Worked in an environmental education camp in Massachusetts, a 1,000-acre wildlife sanctuary, where I taught children and adults the importance of environmental science and environmental education. I went to college to become a teacher. I was a classroom teacher for 10 years, taught kindergarten, first grade, and fourth grade, and absolutely loved it. During the economic downturn of 2008, the principal at the time asked me to help out with some light administrative duties. One of our assistant principals transferred, and there was a hiring freeze, so we weren't able to replace them. So I picked up books, buses, and discipline, he said, wow, you're really good at this. And I said, oh, well, thank you. Anything to help the school, whatever it takes. And so he nominated me for a leadership program that was subsidized by the district. And I said, oh, thank you so much. I'm not interested. And he said, well, haven't you ever wanted to be anything more than a teacher? And I said, no, there's nothing greater in the world than being a teacher. Why would I ever want to do anything else? He said, well, I nominated you for the program. It would look bad if you didn't go and at least hear them out. So I went to the information session as he requested. And they told us about the application process. It was a competitive process. And I went back and said, well, I've done what you've asked. I attended the information session. He said, well, do me a favor, Mr. Lis. It would look bad on me if you don't at least apply. And so I filled out the application process. And sure enough, by chance or good fortune, was selected. And as I started to go through my program, I started to move into more classroom observations. And I started to see that the things we discussed in our professional learning communities and our team plannings, we all said we were doing. But then when I would go and do the observations, people would go back in their room and do it the way it had always been done. And so I started to realize why I had been tapped for this opportunity. It was because I was willing to step out of my comfort zone, try to do it in a different way, try to increase student achievement by trying some new methodology. And so I knew at that point that I needed to move into that leadership position so that I could support teachers in being comfortable enough to shift their paradigm and really step outside of their comfort zone to implement practices that would improve student learning, because our students are so different now than they were when we were growing up. And so to teach them in the same way, it does them a huge disservice.
And I think that nudge from that particular individual did help you and to just pushed you into the whole leadership arc. And I think that has worked out really well for you. So I think that was amazing. Okay, so you worked in both public and charter school systems. And from going to Charlotte to charter schools in US and now to TMSA, how have those diverse experiences shaped your leadership philosophy today?
So I was very much a district person. I was in district school for 17 years, attended district school as a child. started to drink the district Kool-Aid, so to speak, which was believing that charter schools were a negative impact on public district schools, believing that they took funding away from public district schools. But it wasn't until I stepped into my first charter school principal role, which in the state of North Carolina, it's quite different. You're actually the superintendent because each charter school is its own local education agency. So as its own LEA, you are the superintendent of that sort of mini district in a way. That I realized that we completed all the same requirements and essentially did more with less. We get in North Carolina roughly 70 cents on the dollar that traditional district schools get in funding. And have all the same requirements, all the same state testing. The only slight difference was that in North Carolina, only 50% of the teachers have to be certified in a charter school. Well, of course, our charter, when it was written, said 100% of the teachers. So at that point, we were essentially the same as the district school. And I started to see that charter schools are essentially a relief valve for district schools, especially in the North Carolina market, because the communities are growing so fast down here, they can't build the schools fast enough. I'll use my own children as an example. The school they attended elementary school in, after its first year, had to put 15 mobile units on the playfield. And it's because even by the time they finished constructing the building, it already was not able to hold the number of students that needed to attend. And that is very commonplace in our area because of the incredible amount of growth. And if all the charter schools in the state of North Carolina shut down, there would be a huge crisis with enrollment and places for those students to go. Additionally, now that I've been a charter school principal, I recognize that we provide opportunities for families that want a different choice for their children. And there's a lot of political meandering around the word choice. But what that ultimately means is children are no longer slated to attend the school of the zip code in which they reside. And so I grew up in a more impoverished area as a child. So the school that I attended to was not the highest quality school growing up in elementary school. And there were other schools in our area, in our district, that received a lot more resources and were much more high performing. And it wasn't fair, thinking way back to then, that just because where my parents could afford to purchase a home meant that the quality of the school was not the strongest quality. And so as a charter school, we could provide options for families so that you're no longer slated to receive the type of education based on where you live, but rather the choices that your parents make.
Since you mentioned family engagement has been one of your hallmarks of your leadership. So what specific practices have you found the most effective in building trust and commitment with families?
It's really about having parents as partners. Parents are the children's first teacher, and it's so important that we engage in honest and open discourse with them and really find out what they know has worked and where they find challenges. And you can do that in multiple ways because families can't always attend school. You might have a parent working two jobs. So these evening events that you hold, they're not able to attend. They're not able to come during the day. So something that we started during COVID, and very little positive things came out of COVID. I've been a school leader throughout COVID, but one of the positive things was being able to engage folks through online platforms. So Zoom meetings are nice. That's a good way to engage folks. But what I really found is that our parents prefer the social media medium. And so we'll do Facebook Live community meetings where parents can type in questions and then one of my assistants will read me those questions and I'll answer those questions for them right then and there. We track those questions to ensure that that's the type of information we're putting in our principal newsletter each week. And then we also track many times the questions that are asked already appear, those answers in that principal newsletter. But then we start to look at the newsletter and say, how can we move this up? How can we highlight this? How can we bold this? How can we make sure that people who want this information are getting this information? And I will be honest, I have 3 children, and they're currently in 6th grade, 9th grade, and 12th grade. And so last year, they were at 3 different levels. I had an elementary student, a middle school student, and a high school student, which meant I was receiving 3 different principal newsletters every week. And I am as guilty as the next parent, where I would not read through their entirety. I would skim, as all parents do. We're all very busy. And so tracking that data in those online forums that we have with our parents allows us to ensure that the information that they seek, that they desire, that they want at their fingertips is readily available. So we can post that to social media in addition to putting it in the principal newsletter. And the nice part is when you do a Facebook Live, it notifies all of the members of that group. So a parent might be at their job and they're on a break and their phone says, "Oh, your school's just gone live." They'll click on it and they'll think, "Oh, I have this question I want to ask." And so it's not just about providing opportunities for parents to connect to you, but it's also outreach to encourage parents to connect to you. And that really builds that trust and that sense of community. Another great thing that we've done is the business to business directory. So in a charter school, again, you're not so much a geographic or a zoned area. So I have students that come from a half an hour west or a half an hour east, which means those families are an hour apart. But by providing parents an opportunity who own their own business or work in a field to put their information in there, I can call a plumber, an electrician, an HVAC person that my child attends school with, and I'm going to trust that they're going to give me an honest answer and the best deal anywhere. And so you're taking this large geographic region and really building a sense of community within the school, as well as holding many community events. So our upcoming event is the Trunk or Treat, where we decorate the trunks of the car and provide opportunities for students who celebrate Halloween to come trick or treat in a safe place in the front parking lot. But we've done staff and student kickball with parents. We've done lots of community events. We did donuts with dads, muffins with moms. We constantly are putting on events here at the school and making the school what schools once were, which is that central hub in the community where everyone wants to come and celebrate and do things. And that, again, builds that trust, because if you do have to make a crucial conversation phone call with a parent, if they've met you, if they sat and talked with you, if they know you from these events, some of that trust is already built, and that conversation is much easier, and parents are much more receptive when you have to have those conversations.
And I think I'm hearing a lot of innovative methods. I think the Facebook thing is really incredible. Also, the moms with muffins, is that what you said? Incredible.
Yep,
I think this is so, I love it. Okay. So your new role is about building the foundation culture of TMSA Concord. What does celebrating best practices look like in action for you and your staff?
So it's really important that we celebrate all the time, whether we're celebrating student growth, whether we're celebrating teacher initiative in implementing best practices, whether we're celebrating things in our personal lives. So at the end of every staff meeting, we always end every staff meeting with a celebration. And as a founding principal, as a brand new school, it's really building the culture from the ground up. So it's really important that we share those personal celebrations as well. A teacher stood up this week and said that their daughter was just accepted to graduate school. Those little things help us connect to one another, because essentially when you are starting a brand new school, you're starting with a group of strangers, and you need to break down those barriers between them so that they can build trust with one another, so that then when they're in their PLCs, or the professional learning community or team meetings, they can say, my students aren't really doing well with math, and I see that yours are. What are you doing that I can implement in my classroom? But if you don't have that trust, if you don't have that safe space for those opportunities for teachers to be vulnerable, then those best practices can't be transferred between classrooms. So we celebrate at the end of each staff meeting, but in addition to that, we have the Lion Award. So at the beginning of each school year, our mascot is a lion here. We purchased 7 lions and passed them out to the team leads and asked them to celebrate one of their colleagues at the staff meeting. And then each week, if you receive the lion the week prior, you have to stand up and celebrate someone. So that's that peer-to-peer celebration, because the top-down celebration is great. And of course, at the last slide, I had pictures of our science teacher in 5th grade who was doing labs, hands-on learning with their students this week, and celebrated her for the hands-on learning, and reminded staff that the things I remember about school, which was forever ago, it seems, were things like dissecting a frog, were things like, still at school, so turn down the walkie. Those things that I remembered from school were those science labs where I did dissect the frog, where I remember that those hands-on things are what really stick with children and what they remember about school. And so that top-down celebration is excellent, but you have to be careful because if you do too much top-down celebration, people can start to look at one another. Oh, that's his favorite or that's her favorite. Where when you have that peer-to-peer celebration, it's really grassroots. It's coming from the bottom up, and it really helps build that positive school culture. We talked at the beginning of the school year about how people can either be faucets or drains, and that the efforts of many faucets can be drained by one drain, and a drain simply doesn't have to do anything to be a drain. It can simply exist, and that we all need to be faucets and to fill one another up. We had another kind of a booster to that 2 weeks ago, where we talked about what we can learn from geese and the power of geese. And when geese are flying in a V, it's because the air is cut and lifted by the first goose that's flying in the V, and it helps lift the geese behind it. And when that goose gets tired, it circles back, and then the next goose takes the lead. And the reason geese honk as they fly is they are encouraging the lead goose to continue the work, and that we need to honk to one another, right? And this is a wonderful time of year for this lesson because I'm here in North Carolina. We have the geese flying south for the winter. So we're seeing the Canadian geese landing in our retention pond, walking across our fields in the mornings. And so this is a great reminder of the importance of that celebration of one another and that encouragement that keeps us going. Education can be a thankless field. Very often we work countless hours. It is not the most lucrative career field. And we see some of the largest challenges in society. And most recently, with the way legislation has worked across our country, and when I say recently, I mean the past 20 years, a lot of the challenges in society have been placed at the doorstep of the teachers to solve, whether that's poverty, whether it's multi-language learners, whether it's student with learning differences, all of those things teachers are expected to take upon themselves and find solutions for. And so it's so important that we have those celebrations, that we encourage one another, that we continue that positive energy, because if you fall trap to what very often happens in leadership, which is we receive as principals, and this is both district and charter, multiple tasks that require multiple hours, typically sitting at your computer. If you do that during the day when your teachers and your students are in the building, inadvertently, you become that drain. Because simply by doing nothing, by not being visible, by not being there during class change, by not being in the building doing walkthroughs, by not being at lunch doing lunch duty, by not being at carpool, the perception is you're not all in. And that's what's so important, is that they see that leader as someone who is in all those spaces. So when I do lunch duty, I am cleaning the floor and wiping down the tables, right? Because there isn't anything that I won't do to make this the best school anywhere. And when children see that, they take responsibility for the mess they make around them. When teachers see that, they come over and they say, no, let me take that from you. I said, no, I got it. Thank you. But then they know that when they're walking back to the classroom and there's a piece of paper on the floor in the hallway, they stop and pick it up, because this is our school and it's what we make of it. And it's how we act as leaders that sets that example for others.
So I think fostering that connection between teachers and also you being so present in terms of just being visible for the students and the teachers, I think that is what has made such a strong positive vibe in the school. So yeah, I think that is really incredible and perfect. Okay. So TMSA is also known for its team integrated model and project lead the way pathways. So how do you see this shaping the elementary school experiences for your students?
So it really starts here at the elementary school with the Smart Lab program that's implemented across our elementary schools, and that provides students hands-on learning opportunities in coding, engineering, robotics, all those fields that we're seeing and hearing the United States is falling behind in. And as a child growing up, I played with Legos and built all kinds of different things. But children are different now. When they're in the stroller, when they're in the grocery cart and they start to get fussy, they're handed an iPhone. And so children at a very young age are introduced to technology, and that technology has affected them and affected the way they play. It's affected the way they interact with one another.
Mm.
Um, there's the term free range children. I was very much a free range child. We would take bike rides and hike in the woods and build tree forts and all of those things. Nowadays, children aren't really allowed outside of their yards, outside of their fenced in areas. And when they are, it's what's called a play date. And so you typically have two adults and then maybe two or three children. And anytime a conflict arises, the adults are there to solve the conflict. So children aren't learning those skills, those conflict resolution skills, because of the new normal. And so when we have these opportunities in our school to have hands-on learning and they build something and they're trying to follow the directions and it doesn't work, they learn how to fail forward. And that's such a huge and important lesson because very often, and I'm as guilty as the next man, as parents, we want to move obstacles out of our children's path. And so we refer to that as bulldozer parents. We're clearing a path to make it as easy as possible for them to grow up and be successful. But in doing so, we're robbing them of that opportunity to slip and fall, to pick themselves up, to learn from their mistakes, and to move forward. So that hands-on opportunity when you're doing coding and the coding you put in doesn't work, when you've programmed your robot and your robot doesn't go, when you're building something and it falls apart halfway through, you learn from those failing forward opportunities. And that's what leads to that Project Lead the Way program that we implement in middle school. It's what helps our students be so successful in Science Olympiad and Math Olympiad. It is what helps our children become leaders, is that life experience that because of the new normal, most children don't have.
And I think one of the major skills that they're learning through this is also frustration tolerance. Because, whenever something that they've built is not working, and I think when they have to manage that frustration, also still carry forward with that project, I think they do learn a lot of important skills that they would have to use as adults. So yeah, that is incredible. Okay, so my next question is very well connected to this discussion that we just had. So with AI beginning to make its way into the classrooms, how do you see AI tools complementing STEAM model at Concord in the near future?
So AI is so important. In fact, one of our professional development plan goals, so we set up 3 professional development plan goals for each teacher. We provide them 2 school-wide goals, and then they have 1 personal goal. One of our goals this year is actually to help our students engage with artificial intelligence and then learn how artificial intelligence can support them. I can use myself as an example. I'm not a huge AI guy, but I am starting to learn the importance of it. So this summer, we had not taken ownership of the building until June 1st. We started school August 12th. So I had to hire an entire staff remotely for the most part. So most of those teachers I needed to secure, the best teachers, were available in the spring. And so I did those interviews the same way we're having our conversation via Zoom, but I also had a Zoom AI note taker that would provide me a more detailed summary of the interview that we had than any of the handwritten notes that I would take as we spoke. And it would help me at the end when I had 2 really strong candidates and I needed to make a decision. I could look at that AI note taker and I could see things that I had forgotten that they said and said, oh, that's what we're looking for. That's the one we want. When you're really torn, it can be a huge support. And so that's taking place all over the world right now. In the United States, 30% of medical papers published last year had evidence of AI use, right? So it's everywhere. And if we're not helping our children engage with AI, learn how to use it responsibly, learn how to use it not as a replacement of their thought, but a way to augment and improve their thought and articulate it in a way that is how they intend for their audience to hear it, then we're doing them a huge disservice. Many of the parents I speak with tell me about the AI that they're using in their career fields. It is used in everything from logistics to, as we said, the medical field. And so it's so important that we help children engage with AI in a responsible way and understand how this tool can help support their thinking and their learning, not replace it. And so we are, as a school, starting that from kindergarten all the way through 5th grade.
It's incredible. And I think rather than being fearful of AI, if we just look at it from a way that will help us and like just make our lives a little easier, I think that is a wonderful perspective to have. Okay. So some charter schools experiment with electives or extra course for all students. So at your school, are there opportunities or plans for specialized learning experiences beyond these core curriculums that you have?
Yes. So we have our what we call special area or elective classes. Students each week go to gym, art, music, technology, smart lab, and the media center, which is a true old-fashioned library. Because while Kindles and digital texts are wonderful, there is nothing like sitting with a good book, right, and turning the pages and putting a bookmark in and picking up where you left off. And again, that helps reduce some of that screen time, which again, we understand screen time is important as our students will most likely be using screens in their career fields. But we also understand there's a real importance to falling in love with books. And in addition to those, we offer after-school clubs. We have over 25 after-school clubs, and those are really a great way for students to find something at school that they love. And I'll use my youngest son as an example. Huge soccer player, loves soccer, watches videos on soccer, plays soccer year round. The days he has soccer practice or a game, um, and he wakes up and he doesn't want to go to school because it's early and it's still dark out. And I say, oh, well, if you don't go to school, you don't go to soccer. He pops right out of bed, runs down the stairs, eats his breakfast, and gets ready, right? When students have something that they love at school, it can help them stay more engaged during the school day and help them feel more part of the school. And whether that's the chess club, the robotics club, the Disney Sing-Along Club, right? There are so many different clubs for so many different students, for so many different pathways that they choose, that everyone finds their niche and they're engaged. So every one of my teachers hosts an after-school club. And it's something we're extremely proud of because it shows that the teachers recognize that this is a way to engage students, even though it's not the traditional academic engagement, it does spill over into those academics during the school day.
I think providing that sort of an opportunity is really great. So I mean, congratulations for like having such a full-fledged program. We love that. Okay. So for my last question for this podcast, every leader has a big rock, that one challenge that they're really focused on. So what is that one rock for you guys right now? And how are you planning on resolving that?
So I think when you are a brand new school and you're building that staff and student culture, that big rock is wanting to move at the pace that you recognize as the path to the level of achievement that you want to attain. But monitoring closely that sometimes you need to slow down to speed up. Sometimes you need to take a step back. So I'll use our Saturday school as an example. Our goal was to start Saturday school this weekend on Saturday. We actually pushed that to next weekend just because we recognized that the programming that we would provide did not meet the level of the standard that we expect. And so it's okay if sometimes you slow down, because if you slow down and you take your time to create the plan that's going to be most successful, it will yield the results you're looking for, even though it may not happen when you want it to. At the same time, and on the other side of that coin, it's so important that you don't let perfection prevent you from starting. Teachers are perfectionists by nature. And very often they'll say, we're just not ready yet. And some things like our clubs, we had to start. We had to start those sooner because we are over a month into the school year. We're about to be 2 months into the school year. And it's so important that those students maintain that level of engagement after the excitement and the newness of the new school wears off. So while teachers weren't 100% ready, we started anyway, and it didn't matter because the students loved it. They loved every opportunity they had. And, if the first chess club, we didn't have enough chess boards, that was okay. We could talk about how chess pieces move. We could talk about all the different things. And the students were still fully engaged and absolutely loved it. And even though the chess boards didn't come to the following session, they didn't mind, right? And so while, yes, sometimes you need to slow down to speed up, one of those things that you have to be cautious of is not to slow down so much that you don't start, because that perfectionism can often lead to we're not ready yet. We can't do that. We'll just hold off till next semester. And that really does a huge disservice to your school. So that's a two-sided coin that you have to be careful of.
I think finding a right balance between, not starting at all to like just knowing when to stop is, I think, the key to go about it. So I think that is incredible. Okay, so that are all the questions that I had from my end. We have this little segment where we have the previous leader ask a question for the next one that we're doing a podcast with. So the question that has come up for you is that how do you support individual and workforce resilience within your organization to promote and retain exemplary educators?
So there's an old saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And what that means is if the district down the road or the charter school down the road is paying $2,000 more or is offering more planning time or has some other initiative that is attempting to draw away your strongest teachers, the culture you build in your school, the family feel, the fact that people share not just their celebrations, but their losses with one another, that keeps people engaged. There's one other thing that's really important that I learned as a classroom teacher. It's that you're only as strong as your weakest teacher. So if there's someone that is just not following the plan, that is just doing it their own way, they're just phoning it in, they're just kind of floating through, that hardworking teacher will look beside them and think that person is making as much as I am, and they're doing whatever they want, and no one ever approaches them, no one ever calls them out on it, no one ever holds them accountable. And if you show what you value by what you confront, and if you don't confront those people that aren't pulling their weight within the organization, you will lose those best teachers no matter how strong your culture is. So it's a culture of celebration, but it also has to be a culture of accountability.
Again, I think it all zeroes down upon balance. So, like, also creating that environment for teachers to feel like family, but also being a little administrative and knowing when to confront them. Lovely. Okay. So, I think I learned a lot today, and I think so will our listeners. So, yeah, thank you so much for taking out the time to do this with us today. Yeah, thank you.